Hey there, this is Mark Johnson from the Grady College of Journalism and Mass Communication at the University of Georgia. Just want to stop in and let you know about a post that's coming up next week and talk a little bit about the craft of photojournalism today. Coming up next week is going to be a semi-regular feature on gear. Most of my students are wrapping up and getting ready to head home for the holidays here. Some of them are graduating. Actually, there's a good chunk of my students that are graduating this semester. So I'm starting to get lots of questions about what should I buy. And so I'm going to put together some suggestions, some ideas, a couple of tips on how to get good deals on some of the gear that you're going to need out there. So that'll be coming up sometime in the middle of next week would be my guess. But before we get to that, I want to talk a little bit about something that rattles around in the back of my head an awful lot. Depending on which of my students you ask, some of them are going to tell you that I'm a bit of a geek. I love cameras, I love technology, I love to play around with them. But when it really comes down to it, the most important thing to me is always stories. It's the journalism side of photojournalism that I try and emphasize the most in my classes. But there's another aspect, another way that you can approach this, and that's the idea of craft. And when I think about craft, I think about photojournalists who are excellent technicians, who are excellent storytellers, and who are thinking about our role in our communities constantly and how our roles as visual journalists really can affect our communities. And one of the folks who's at the top of my list every time I start thinking about craft is a fellow up in just outside of Boston by the name of Greg Marinchuk. And Marinchuk had he's just he's a great shooter. He's a great guy. He's the kind of guy that you want to go hang out with for a couple of hours and just pick his brain. He started working for small newspapers as a community journalist, and for the last couple of years has spent a lot of time up in New Hampshire doing presidential primaries. And he's not a real flashy shooter. He doesn't shoot with all the latest and greatest equipment. Actually, one of the things I love about him on his website, there's a little hidden section that I'll give you a link to so you can find it, where he talks about the stuff that he shoots with. And while he's got all the G-Wiz Nikons and strobes and stuff like that, he also tends to haul around a whole lot of old stuff. He reminds me a lot of David Burnett in the fact that he is always looking for a slightly different way of telling a story. He's looking for a different visual presentation to get you to pay attention to his images. But this idea of craft, this idea that it's more than just the picture, that it's what goes into making the picture, that it's what goes into telling the story. It's the care for the profession. That's the thing that I've been thinking about a whole lot lately. And I hope as we go into the holidays and everybody sort of relaxes a little bit, for those of you who are students or in the academic world, and for those of you that are in the industry, hopefully you'll get a little bit of time off and you can go for a walk and go for a drive someplace. Maybe find a nice little dirt road with a few fall foliage leaves left on it. There's a couple of them down here in Georgia still, which, a week before Thanksgiving is kind of freaking me out a little bit. But after 5 years of this, I should be used to it. But think about what it is that we do and why it is that we became visual storytellers and what our role is in our communities. I tell my students that I think we have a constitutional responsibility to tell stories, that our students, that our readers, that our audiences need to see what's going on in our communities in order to be able to make decisions when they go into the polls. So that's my thought for this week. I hope you're having a good week. And again, this has been Mark Johnson from the University of Georgia. Go tell stories.